Well, good afternoon, Strathcona County. I'm Rod Frank, your mayor. It's time for another virtual coffee. And today, joined by Shawn Haggarty. Shawn, I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Thank you, Rod. Shawn Haggarty, Superintendent of Elk Island Catholic Schools, and I too am enjoying myself in a virtual coffee. I'm
nice little product placement there also.
What was that?
I said a nice little product placement you also got in there too.
Absolutely.
That's good. Absolutely. Good. Well, Shawn is a very important leader in our community. He heads up Elk Island Catholic Schools. As he just said, he's the superintendent. Shawn, I am so curious, and I know everybody listening is very curious to find out how in the world did the school system change from teaching in classrooms to teaching virtually overnight? Because I just can't believe how that could be done.
How you can pivot an entire system that's been in place for over 150 years in a matter of 5 days. Still, I'm dumbfounded with what's occurred. Pretty phenomenal, to be honest. When we found out from the ministry, which was a late afternoon on a Sunday, that classes would be canceled, and the wording is interesting. Schools are open, classes are canceled. In each of our buildings, we have administrator, secretary, and custodial that are in there at the time, but no students and no staff. Everyone is now at home working. And we took the first 5 days to do professional development with all of the staff. So we went out to all the schools. Then we worked with specific grade levels and individual teachers. And the biggest emotion I had and still have is one of pride. And it's the pride in the staff, how they came together and they pivoted quickly. And all of the decisions was based upon what was the right thing for kids. And that's still the focus that they're looking at. We're not going to go through something that is a worldwide crisis, this pandemic that we're going through, and be able to say it's all just been smooth. No, there's been bumps along the way. We're still experiencing bumps, but there's fewer as we go along. But the collective work of everybody and the reaching out with purposeful connection has been phenomenal. Very proud.
Well, that is an unbelievable story. And I know what you're talking about in terms of how quickly it happened. I keep saying in these interviews that it was back on March 11th when it was a Wednesday evening, and we were all getting ready for this big pandemic response. But then you heard that the NBA was going to close down. You go, hold it. We're in a different phase of this. And by the weekend, the schools were in the same boat as everybody else. So you've been able to pivot. I imagine there's been a continuum of responses all the way from this is the no problem, I know technology, all the way down to I don't even own a computer. And that's probably true of your teachers and your staff and your students. How have you gotten through with those at-risk people that really aren't that technologically savvy, or they're just resistant to change?
We do have some teachers that live in rural area, because with Elk Island Catholic, Vegreville, Port Saskatchewan, Camrose, the area in between, centered around the county here. We have some teachers out in their farms that don't have connectivity. So that's a real challenge when you have online programming for home. So we first said, is it going to be paper and pencil delivery? Can we do it through Google Classroom? We have this other product called Canvas. In some of the cases, those teachers are every day driving into the school. That's their center for work. But virtually everyone else has been able to transition to home. And it's that whole array of problems, from connectivity to there's high stress and anxiety in many of the homes out there today. Mm-hmm. In some cases, both mom and dad have now received layoffs, are at home, multiple kids trying to fight over bandwidth within access to the computer and so on. Now, a few years ago within Elk Island Catholic, we went to personally owned devices. So from grade 4 and up, every student already had a Chromebook or another device. So that made the transition a little bit easier. But we're still working on it. We also have a bank of Chromebooks and other computers at the school level. So for families that don't have access, or their mom and dad are on the computer and they need another device, we've been loaning those out to the various families for usage. and just try to mitigate things as they come forward. Within each school, we also, because we have our core teachers who are spending most of their time now in the development of lessons and delivering lessons. But we have some of our non-core teachers that aren't as busy with the delivery. So at each school, we form connection teams, and that's led by our FWW, Family Wellness Worker, and our CRCs would be like special ed lead. They're working with the educational assistants and the non-core teachers in this connection team to reach out to each home. And where we have kids who might not be logged in, it's not up to the sole responsibility of the Science 7 teacher to be getting hold of that family, and then the English teacher, and then the social studies teacher. We're trying to set it up where it's referred to the connections team that will then reach out to the home and find out what are some of the struggles that they're having. How can we help? How can we be of assistance? Maybe it's through connectivity. Maybe it's through counseling. We also we're receiving in some of our schools nutrition grants from the province, and we've redirected those dollars to support families that are in need. I know within the Vegreville area, they've put together hampers for both St. Luke and Holy Redeemer area. Done the same thing where the money that we received for the nutrition grant we've turned over to help still provide food for the families and so on. But you don't know the individual cases or needs in the home until you reach out, until you make the connection. And our teachers are the experts with that. Our teachers and educational assistants are the ones that have the relationships with the students and the parents. And it's then referring that to the connections team so we can follow up to the best of our ability.
Okay. So I guess sometimes, it might be easier to transition when you don't have an option. I guess options no failures, they say with the Apollo 13. And you said a lot of really interesting things there. Two things that I want to follow up on. Did you have the curriculum up for all the grades and all the subject material? I'm surprised if you did. And how do you deal with that when you have curriculum gaps that aren't online? And then the second one, which is quite a different question, is I'm curious about the people that are finding it difficulty to transition from going from face to face. There might be anxiety around it. There might be just a resistance. There might be not so much a technical issue, but just that mentally, emotionally, they don't buy into this. Has that come up at all?
All those pieces have come up, and we're trying to deal with all of them. Probably the biggest issue we've had at the very beginning, I don't know if issue is the right word. One of the big challenges is when the Minister of Education came out and said that classes will resume, there were limits put on the hours of instruction. So the limits put on the number of hours of delivery for each week. And on the other side, we have staff, a third of our staff were ready on day one to do the full bore of the coursework. And we're not able to do that. So it's to pare back down to the key learning outcomes that need to be taught and learned. Well, at the same time, what can we focus on as the priority? So the younger grades, the literacy and the numeracy take the priority. And being a Catholic school system, religion is one of the classes that's still covered all the way taught from kindergarten all the way up to grade 12. But you have some teachers that are ready to give the whole piece, where they'll become very overwhelming within the home. And then you have other teachers that are trying to gauge with the family. And you look at it from a student perspective, again, we have about a third of the kids who the work that they're doing is phenomenal that they're turning in. But in some other homes, because of the stress, the anxiety, as I mentioned prior, mom and dad might be at work with other priorities going on, caring for older grandparents and so on. Even getting those kids logged in to get started. And that's where our connection team is really kicking in. But it's all of that. It's a spectrum of responses that are coming and that we're looking at, and what's the right thing for that child and for that family to reach out to them.
Okay, so there's challenges there with the curriculum, with getting people buying in it, perhaps in some cases. How about any real success stories or comments? I'm sure you've got a lot of heroes there on the staff and maybe some students that are really shining. What are some lessons you've learned there?
Again, I'll come back to the word relationships. That relationships that the kids have with the teachers and the teachers have with their kids. The educational assistants, the bus drivers, all of them. We've been sharing, and it's been interesting to follow on Twitter because we've been asking, we've given a hashtag for our staff to get out the good work that's going on to share as well, share that provincially. But every community, I'm trying to remember which school it was. I think it was Jean Vanier. One day the administrator showed up and taped to the door was a big thank you poster from one of the parents within the community. I was walking into work here one day, and in this beautiful spring that we've been having, in about 4 inches of snow, and one parent had inscribed EICS, we thank you, in the snow. It's been a difficult time, a challenging time, but it's also been the affirmations and the recognition of the good work going on is really well received. In various staffs, parents have been dropping off cookies and gifts and different things for those that are at the schools. Every day we have, through Zoom technology, we have admin meeting. So all the administrators within the division, we have just a short meeting, and that sharing takes place. And again, because of the technology, every day the school principal is reaching out to the staff. It's a very short staff meeting that is occurring. But very proud.
Okay, well, that's interesting. After all is said and done, after everything we've been through and all the technology solutions, and it comes down to human relationships a lot of the time and keeping them solid. And there's a lot of leadership just by continuing to look out for each other. So thank you for that. I got a couple other questions. One is, I think of all the students, and I think of the youngest ones because they're probably going, what the heck is this about? I've been on my own for my first 6 years, and suddenly they're making me go to school. Now all of a sudden I'm back at home. They're probably wondering what the heck's going on. And then, of course, I think of the grade 12ers who are moving on in their education and in their careers, and concerned about how they're being supported.
Yeah, and I want to speak specifically in regards to the grade 12s because it is a hugely challenging time. No longer, so diploma exams and provincial achievement tests this year have been canceled. So they won't be, and you might say, oh, the kids are happy about that. Well, it then means that instead of their class awarded mark being worth 70% of the course, it's now worth 100%. So many of them are feeling a higher level of anxiety about, I need to focus and do very well from now to the remainder of the year on my coursework for that. Another part for the grade 12s is the huge buildup and celebration of the graduations. And again, around the not knowing, when will the graduation take place? How will it look? We don't know how long we'll be in this for. Will we be back in the schools before June is done? I don't know. We'll be back in schools for September. We're planning for all the various contingencies that are there, but I do know for our grade 12s that a point of celebration of coming together to recognize all the years that we've done to put in. That means something. It means something to us. It means something to them as well. For the younger kids, I think it's easier. When the teachers have been reaching out to work with them, it's different. They get it, but there's that more of that focus on, again, the relationships, the literacy, and the numeracy piece that can reach. Mm-hmm. But challenging times, interesting times that
yes.
Come with all of this.
Well, when I think about it, I always relied on my kids when they were younger for my technology needs. So they're probably just swimmingly doing well, and the rest of us are struggling in some ways. Okay, so I've heard great leadership by Elk Island Catholic. I want to thank Shawn Haggarty and Elk Island Catholic for continuing to educate our students. Particularly, we are thinking about the grade 12s, and I'm hearing they're going to be well supported, and you're going to have an outstanding education and great end to your career and be able to continue on. Any parting words before we sign off here, Shawn, to your stakeholders?
Well, I do want to acknowledge the work of the county. And Bree Claude has been reaching out to us on a regular basis. And through the social framework, has been bringing together the stakeholders from all of the key agencies. When we were earlier dealing with cutbacks from the province, I walked to the table thinking, okay, I know we're going to be down in supports at the school level. However, at the larger society level, there'll be a response. And then going to that meeting and hearing that each of those groups too are adjusting and less dollars to support everybody with. And so that speaks to us working together and coming together as a community. And there's power in that. But there's been an intentional leadership through the county to pull all of us together. And I want to express appreciation and thank you for that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, Strathcona County, that's a wrap. We'll talk again soon. In the meantime, look after yourself, look after your neighbor, stay safe.